Welcome back, everyone. This is Ravi from Fraud Technology Podcast. It's been a little while before the previous recording. I've been traveling, and it's happy to have Matthew with us today. He's a star from the Connecticut State Police. I would love for him to share more details, but it's my pleasure, and I'm really excited to have him here. This is the first time that I'm talking to somebody from law enforcement on this podcast, and really excited. Welcome here, Matthew. Would love to hear a little bit about you and what you do for the Connecticut State Police.
Sure. I really appreciate you having me, Ravi. Thank you so much. It's a nice honor. I wouldn't say I'm a star, but I appreciate the kind words. um, so what we're doing here, I guess in Connecticut, I particularly focus on financial crimes as kind of more of a broad perspective. We get involved in almost anything you could think of on the larger scale. So we kind of want to be the intermediary between where the federal government would take an investigation, where we're kind of below that threshold for dollar limits and investigative purposes. And we also kind of have delved into cryptocurrencies now as well, because it's become such a use case in our state. We're seeing a lot of victims of fraud in using crypto as a vehicle for the fraud. So we've gotten involved in that space as well. But overall, just general financial crimes is what we're really trying to focus on these days.
Okay. So you also mentioned the Connecticut State Police, right? So how are the different departments involved in financial crime? You talked a little bit about crypto, but I would love to know how the departments are structured, who is typically responsible for what kind of stuff. When we say government, we all assume that it's one government, but I am assuming there's quite a bit of departments there.
Yeah, there's almost too many, it seems like. You got, so you have our level, where the state police, right? But each town may have their own local PD as well, in at least in the US here. And then you have the federal government side as well. So there's kind of a variety of places where you could take your investigations. Typically the feds on their end take larger cases because they have more resources available to them. So from the state perspective, we try and take something in between where local PDs can't really handle it anymore, and then where the feds don't want it because it's not meeting their threshold. So we're kind of intermediaries there. We're picking up those cases, and then we obviously have jurisdiction through the entire state here, whereas a local PD would have specific to their town or their county or wherever that they're working out of. So we kind of have a little more broad scope. And then on top of that, we as a state we're task force officers sworn in with the U.S. Marshal Service. So like myself, I work with the Secret Service, and then my partner works with the FBI's white collar unit. So we have kind of cross designation. So if we do have cases that we need to take federal, the ability for that to happen is much easier process for us.
Oh, wow. So, and you talked a little bit about like local and state and as well as federal, right? So how would you, because sometimes a crime may or may not happen in the same jurisdiction, right? I mean, it happens in multiple. And then in such situations, how is it decided who it goes to?
Typically, it's where the victim resides here. So if the victim is living in Hartford, then we would typically work out of that particular jurisdiction. So Hartford's court would take the case. We would work with Hartford PD or the Troop H, which is the barracks down there in Hartford, would take the investigation. So we kind of take it that way. But then there's also perspective if we find a case that's outside of where I currently am working, but the victim still is in Connecticut and the case is interesting, we could still kind of maybe step in and potentially take the case to kind of work it. So
Okay, understand. So how would a case, for example, come to you? I mean, because I understand from a financial analyst or financial fraud analyst, typically they file SARs, which typically go to FinCEN, right? I mean, that's the process that most of our audience are familiar with. That's the process that they know. And that's the responsibility where it ends, right? So do all the SARs go to a particular case, or how does that flow from a FinCEN to, let's say, somebody like you?
So the regular police or local PDs or state police don't typically see the SARs unless they have some kind of working relationship. So on my case, I'm on the SAR review team for Connecticut. So I go to a
mm,
monthly
mm,
meeting. I get all the SARs that come through Connecticut.
mm,
So we actually review them as a group,
mm,
and we can kind of
mm,
handle cases off those as well. But we get assigned cases from a variety of methods. We'll get, a victim walks into the barracks or the police station, and they'll come in with their complaint that way. We have an email
mm,
router that's specific for cryptocurrency. So occasionally we'll get a victim sending an email in. We'll get contacted by the local
mm,
PDs. The feds may even contact us saying, "Hey, we
mm,
have a case, but it's not really, we can't work it. Can you guys take it?"
mm,
And then, like I said, we also have the SARS as
mm,
well, so like more proactive approach. But I
mm,
mean, there's a
mm,
variety of methods that we take cases, and we have like a really good working relationship with a lot of the local banks, M&T, Liberty,
mm,
Webster, um,
mm, mm,
uh, Citizens. So there's a variety of banks that are
mm.
regionalized here, and they know us well enough
Yep.
where they could potentially just reach out to us and say, "Hey, I think we might have something going on here."
Okay. Okay. So I think related to this, I think there's also an expert that I talked to before. One of the key things that he talked about is because we were talking a lot about what is the best way to detect, because there's a lot of false positives in the
Hmm.
financial side when we are trying to detect whether something is a fraud or not, right? We have a lot of false positives. And so we were talking about what is the best way to optimize detection, right? And one of the key things that he talked about was, one thing is on the detection side to be able to catch the right type of transaction or right type of person.
Hmm.
But the other side of it is also consequence. And um, probably his frustration was that he can see somebody who is a fraudster is coming in, and then he
Hmm.
blocked them. And then he sees that person keeps trying again and again. And he has
Right.
not personally seen any consequence for that particular fraudster. And so he feels that, the fraudster has nothing to lose because he can keep hitting until he finds a hole, basically, right?
Hmm.
And so he was talking about that there has to be a consequence. There has to be a strong consequence for the fraudster if he does something, right? So, and I wanted
Hmm.
to understand, and I know it's probably a very complex um, thing to actually achieve, but I
You have no
wanted to
idea.
understand what are some of the challenges. What are some of the challenges of, let's say, having some consequences in place?
Yeah, man. Phew, this is like a soapbox moment for me. So
Uh,
there are a lot of challenges. One of them being, and it's probably the biggest one, is really education on the subject of financial crime as a whole. Um,
mm,
I think that at least from the law enforcement side, there's not enough focus on it. I think everybody, they
mm,
see the hot button topics, the ghost guns, or domestic violence, or whatever the hot button topic is for the day, right? But white collar crime has never
mm,
been a priority for anyone, even though money
mm,
runs most of these crimes,
mm,
right? You got robberies,
mm,
you got white collar, you got identity theft cases. All of them are revolve around making money, but none of
mm,
us have a lot of units that actually focus on that. So that also
mm,
falls on the prosecutor's side of the house too, where they have no
mm,
no specialty in those niches. So if we bring them a
mm,
case that may be financially
mm,
related, they typically want to be hands
mm,
off on it because it's too complex or it's
mm,
not in their wheelhouse. We'll hear that a lot.
mm,
So trying to get the cases heard to begin with,
mm,
is a
mm,
challenge because of
mm,
those issues. And I think that education really is like the biggest part of that. I think we try our best, especially here in Connecticut, to try and get that message out there.
mm,
But it comes down to people wanting to get the
mm,
education. It comes down to funding a lot of times,
mm, mm,
manpower, right?
mm,
So
mm,
those are all a
mm,
lot of the complexities that
mm,
we try and deal with to get just these cases heard,
mm,
and the bad guys know it, like you said. I mean, I
mm,
think there
yeah,
was
mm,
a study. I don't know if you saw
mm,
it or not. Remember, maybe like
mm,
late last year, I think Cash
mm,
App. Someone did a study about
mm,
Cash App, and they were showing
mm,
that they had for every fraudster that was using it, they had like 5 or 6 accounts active also that they knew about, but were being allowed to happen. And those
mm,
are, like you're saying, if one gets
mm,
taken down, you still have 5
mm,
more accounts active that you can move money through.
yeah,
And
mm,
that's a challenge for us because if I
mm,
can't get a case heard in the first place and you have all these additional layers to the crime, it just makes
mm,
that much more complex and no one wants to hear
mm,
the case then. So like
mm,
trying to get a
mm.
case prosecuted is like really challenging.
Yep, yep, understood. So I also want to understand why for a customer, for example, let's
Hmm.
say they lose a $10,000. It's still a very painful. It may not be life altering, but
Hmm.
still a good chunk of money, which kind of creates a lot of emotional anger uh, and inconvenience, right?
Hmm.
While if I look at it from a law enforcement point of view, $10,000 may not even be enough for a lawyer itself, right? And so, and I wanted to understand the economics of. I can understand a large ticket because I saw the case that you
Hmm.
recently closed, right? Where you were able to recover quite a big chunk of money, right?
Hmm.
Where the effort versus the return on the effort is that. But with a $10,000 kind of a scenario, the effort probably is the same, but
Hmm.
the return is not. Is it ever going to be even possible to stop a $10,000 crime or to have a consequence for somebody who commits a $10,000 crime?
I mean, it's it's no different, honestly. I mean, it looks, I guess, more sexy, right? When it's a big number like that, right? People
Mm,
care about it more.
mm,
But I think for a majority of the US at least, I think 10 grand is still a big chunk of money. You know, even for
correct.
myself, if I lost 10 grand, I'd be
Yeah,
pretty upset myself.
yeah.
Um, so I think people need to come to the realization that any dollar amount lost for a victim could be critical. I mean, I have a victim right now that we're battling the courts with returning assets for,
Mm,
and it's only like $7,000 worth
mm,
of USDT tether,
mm,
but
mm,
it's still a lot of money to this woman. She's living on nothing.
mm,
So
mm,
if she
mm.
got 7 grand back right now, that could be life changing for her.
Yep.
So I'm trying to get people to realize the importance of any dollar amount for a victim is really been uh, also challenging because you also hear like I guess people get jaded when you're in our positions a lot, and I admit it, I was too, and I still am for a lot of stuff. But I
Mm,
think prosecutors who don't really hear these cases as frequently and judges,
mm,
their thing is always, well, how could they be so stupid to fall for
mm,
that? Right?
mm,
That's what you hear
yeah.
a lot of times,
Mm,
or
mm,
some variation to that, and it's upsetting for me because we have more of a direct relationship with that victim, so we see the $10,000 loss and how it affects their life,
mm,
and they're not really seeing that. They're also reading is like my search warrant or a
mm,
case report.
mm,
So getting people to understand that dollar amount really doesn't matter.
mm,
You know,
mhm,
it could be $1 million or $10,000, whatever it is.
mm.
For that person, that is $1 million to them. You know,
Correct, correct.
that is their loss. So
Mm,
I, it's just again the education. It's just really challenging as a
mm,
whole.
mm, mm. So I understand from the victim standpoint, is $10,000
Mm,
could be quite a bit. What I wanted to understand is from a law enforcement point of view, it is not really scalable. Maybe we can bring that number to let's say 1,000, right? A
mm,
thousand. So sometimes even myself, let's say I lose $20, $30, I may say, oh, I don't even want to go through the trouble of even going and reporting it, right? I just
yeah.
forget it, right? There may be a number which each of us will start like, hey, I'm worried about it. Right? What I
Mm.
want to understand is what is scalable? What can even law enforcement do without actually doing something really manually?
I don't know because we would need to invest in technology, just like your podcast talks about, right? And I think
Yeah. Mm,
investing in technology is really challenging.
mm,
For
mm,
us,
mm,
having open lines of communication with the banks, where a
mm,
lot of your software comes into play, is really a key
mm.
portion of that because
Okay.
our
Mm,
agencies won't
mm,
front that kind of money for a good
mm,
software unless
mm,
there's a legislation that tells us to do it. You know,
mm, mm,
um, so for us
mm,
to scale tech it's really challenging. We're more focused on like body cameras right now and like,
mm,
more like stuff that is in line with
mm,
um, covering the agency as a liability purpose, not so
mm,
much a let's prevent crime type of
mm,
technology.
mm,
So I don't know scaling wise. I mean, that would be fantastic if you could do it because we would love to use it, but
mm.
um,
Okay.
I don't know if
Mm,
there's no dollar amount like you're asking that
mm,
would say, hey, now we'll do it.
mm,
You know.
mm, Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. And you talked a little bit about the crypto, and I can understand. I mean, because I think most of the people still view crypto as a black box.
Mm.
And as you see more and more crimes related to crypto, that must be even more challenging for a lot of PDs out there, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. And how do you handle a new type of crime? How do you educate yourself? You talked about education, but
Yeah.
it's like a catch-up game, right? So how do you keep yourself abreast?
I mean, educating myself on a lot of this stuff has been the key for because, like you say, technology is advancing so fast now. AI is getting involved in a lot of this process as well, and I
Mm,
know by the time like an agency at state level get ahead of this, they're already gonna have a new technology beyond what we're working on right now. So, trying to get the boots on the ground educated on a lot of this subject matter it has been like our main mission right now. We
mm,
want to just give them the basics. You know, we don't want to give them an indoctrination into what crypto is. We just want to get, hey, listen, this is what to look for.
mm,
If someone comes in with this type of investigation or crime that's been committed, we want you guys to at least bring it to us. If we know we exist, we can
mm,
help you.
mm,
There's resources available.
mm,
Don't because the biggest problem we're seeing is reporting, and
mm,
because the guys that take the initial complaints don't know that there's help out there and resources available, they
mm,
may just suspend the investigations right off the bat because they're not familiar with how to work them. So,
mm,
because there is
mm,
there's technology available to them,
mm,
but um, it's not afforded to everybody on the playing field, right? There's only special niche people who can get the
mm,
access to it because it
mm.
costs so much money.
Yep. Mm,
So we're just trying to get them the basic knowledge and let
mm,
them know we have technology to help them, trace or whatever we got to do with crypto.
mm. Okay, understand. And maybe for us, well, let's say you get a case. What would be a typical process, and what are the typical challenges that you face at each of the stages when you are investigating a case? And would also love to know, what's the typical time frame that a case takes, an average case. Again, I'm sure there's a lot of variation there, but
hmm
a general steps and then how much time it takes would be good.
Yeah. I mean, basic financial crime cases as a whole, or we're talking months.
Mm, mm,
More that obviously scale that depending on dollar amount loss, right? Because the complexity involved probably pushes it. So you're
mm,
probably looking at probably closer to over a year
mm,
when it gets to be more complex.
mm,
Involving crypto, that variation could be a couple of weeks to a couple months.
mm,
We don't really have year-long investigations when there's crypto.
mm,
Usually it's a shorter time frame because of the speed in which the money moves.
mm,
You're looking at like probably, yeah, I'd say months is more accurate. But
mm,
if so what we normally do is you get a complaint comes in, right? You have a victim comes in, we get a phone call, email. It doesn't matter how the process is, but
mm, mm,
usually we'll take a case, we'll speak to the investigator or the person who receives the complaint. We'll go talk to the victim. We try and
mm,
get a direct statement from the victim who
mm,
will go over the fraud or the theft or however it works. After we get that, we try and get statements of financial statements, documentation to prove it because
mhm.
we're going to take them on their word, but we need evidence, obviously.
Yeah. Mm,
So we'll do a statement analysis on that. Then if it's crypto, we'll obviously have to trace it, right?
mm, mm,
There's some legal process involved there as well, so we'll have to write search warrants
mm,
and
mm,
write reports on stuff.
mm,
Um, so I mean, it's always the same thing for the most
mm,
part. It's victim statements,
mm,
it's search warrants or consent forms for accounts where it's getting account records. It's
mm,
for um,
mm,
to contacting banks,
mm,
getting records from them.
mm,
It's technology, so maybe doing a cell phone download
mm,
or getting cell phone data or getting
mm,
some kind of like,
mm,
Google maybe
mm,
or Gmail account
mm,
records or iCloud,
mm,
stuff like that. So that's what complicates it and creates, lengths in time on stuff like that because there's so many steps in place. If they're depending on like tech involved, if I have to send now a search warrant to Google, I have to wait months for them to send the data back. Or if I contact Bank of America is a little bit longer than say I go to a local bank who can just
mm,
spit the records out to me. So
mm,
that's what kind of stuff like creates like those delays in time. And then victim reporting, we were talking before about like
mm,
how
mm.
emotionally there's issues, right?
Yep. Mm,
Sometimes they can't admit that they've been defrauded. So then it takes, several weeks or months for them to even report it to us in the first place. So now we're
mm,
extending that delay in reporting even further now. So,
mm. Okay. Okay. And what would be the focus of the investigation? So, what would be the objective? Let's say, from your point of view, you're
mhm.
trying to trace the money. You're trying to find where it went. Uh, what is the objective of the investigation itself?
So It depends on what it is. What we've had a mind shift when it comes to, or I say it's a growth mindset shift for crypto. For
Mm,
crypto, it's not so much getting hands on someone and arresting them anymore. Now
mm,
it's strictly tracing the assets, trying to find it, freeze it,
mm,
seize it, recover it to the victim, right?
mm,
But if it's traditional fiat,
mm,
our goal is to arrest someone because the
mm,
likelihood of us actually recovering
mm,
cash,
mm,
if because a lot of times we'll see is international wire transfers to China or other places that may not be as comfortable with communicating with us.
mm.
So even sending legal process via a multilateral treaty agreement or whatever, an MLAT, to these countries, they won't honor those.
Yeah. Mhm,
So
mm, mm,
tracing those assets and
mm,
getting just showing that the money went to an account overseas
mm,
is sufficient enough. We'll look for some kind of
mm.
U.S. based entity that we can maybe arrest when it comes to fiat.
Okay. So can I understand what is the difference between a crypto and a fiat currency? For crypto, you are trying to recover the assets. Does
Yeah.
this mean that in the fiat scenario, the end bank would compensate or make the victim the whole? Or can I understand why the difference?
Yeah. So, um, the when crypto is being used, typically it goes to obviously like an exchange, right? Like, say like Coinbase or Binance or
Correct.
whoever, right?
Correct.
If it's held in a wallet there, it's
Mm,
much easier for us to communicate with these institutions and freeze and seize those assets typically.
mm,
Whereas these overseas banks don't tend to want to communicate as easily.
oh,
So
mm,
it's more so, I guess, the who want to communicate. I don't know if it's maybe
mm,
inherent that people in the crypto community want to try and keep the crypto community cleaner.
mm,
I just feel like there's something about that market space that people just want to keep the uh
mm,
just keep it open. And I guess there's like this Satoshi Nakamoto and like people have this ideology of what crypto really is.
mm,
And I feel like fiat has been dirtied for so
mm,
many years now that
mm,
people just know that once the money's moved, it's dirty, it's gone, and you can't get out. But people really want crypto to work, I feel
mm,
like.
mm, mm,
And because of that,
mm,
people are more, or these companies are more likely to want to kind of exchange with you because it really is. It comes down to the company wanting to accept our legal process, right?
mm.
If they're not U.S. based, they don't have to honor it. But
Yeah.
a lot of them do because they want to be regulated, they want to be accepted,
Mm,
and they want to have that
mm,
air of crypto is safe.
mm. Okay.
I think that's what it is.
Okay. Okay. Got it. So I'm just also trying to wonder here that maybe because the transactions are also transparent in a crypto scenario, because you can basically say that this money is in your wallet in this particular without them giving you permission. You probably can trace the transactions without needing their.
Mhm.
That's what I'm guessing. With
Right.
in a bank scenario, you probably can't say where exactly is the money, and
Right.
so it basically becomes you can't really pinpoint and say the problem is with this wallet in your particular bank, and so you
Yes.
can't. So they can always not feel responsible essentially as a
Yeah.
bank.
Yeah. No, that's right. They could be hands off more. I think. I feel like with crypto because of the blockchain's open source, right? Anybody
Yeah.
will know that as long as you have attribution, you can
Mm,
know that that wallet's associated with that exchange.
mm,
When it comes to a bank, I won't know that account number unless I do a search warrant to X, Y, and Z bank and show that that transfer occurred.
mm,
So there definitely is more openness to
mm,
crypto, which
mm,
makes things a little bit easier.
mm, mm,
And also creates the timing and speed too. Whereas if I have to serve legal process in a bank, it goes to their lawyers, they create this, big hullabaloo, and it just
mm.
it delays it in itself. Do they want to be involved in the case, right?
Yeah.
So
Mm.
there's that aspect too.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it. Well, that's a realization that I probably not. That's really insightful because I would have thought it would be other way around because
Mm,
banks are like regulatorily required to ensure that it's clean, whereas
mhm.
cryptos, if they are not regulated in your country, don't have that obligation. But what I'm
Right.
hearing from you is the opposite, which is pretty insightful for me actually as well. Um, Also, I wanted to understand what is the typical the number of cases that come to you? How many percentage of that actually goes to a prosecution, and out of that, how many actually even um, come up? I mean, where you fulfill the objective
Mhm.
itself, right? Can I understand? I
Yeah.
mean, not necessarily exact percentages, but even a rough number would be a great idea for us.
So we know crypto side at least, because we've been tracking it now. We have about 7 to 8% recovery rate on crypto, which is
Mm,
actually pretty high.
mm,
We've been lucky.
mm,
But when it comes to more of like a fiat based investigation,
mm,
I haven't had a recovery
mm,
for like a fraud type of case at all.
mm,
Prosecution wise, we're more likely to prosecute on the cash side,
mm,
but usually it's on like a money laundering type of case
mm,
or something along those lines. So it depends on what kind of investigation it is and what type of crimes occurred,
mm,
but we definitely tend to arrest more on the fiat side than we do on crypto.
mm,
Um, and I want to say we're more so investigative heavy on the fiat side too because of that legal process. We have to write more reports
mm,
and there's more legwork involved. Whereas the crypto side, we can simply trace the assets a lot quicker. We say, okay, this is where it went. We get the results back from the account. Is the money there or not? It's that simple, right?
mm,
The fiat side, there's so much more involved to it. Now we have to do like a workup on the subject. Who has the account? Like who
mm,
are they? Where do they live?
mm,
It's just more complex, right?
mm,
So
mm,
that creates and the courts want more when it
mm,
comes to that. If it's
mm,
a recovery of stolen assets, there's no real subject we're arresting.
mhm,
So they don't really need to know as much about it.
mm,
Does the account holder want the money or not?
mm,
You know?
mm. Okay.
So
Mm,
and
mm,
it's actually funny too, because this is trying to be a tangent here, but
mm,
I was talking to a prosecutor about this and they were concerned because the victim assets we were looking to recover, in this case at Binance, he was kind of jaded because of social media and because of news. He goes, "Well, they're being sued by the SEC,
mm,
right?"
mm,
I'm like, what does that matter? Do the account records change because of who they're being sued by?
mm,
I said, "Do you trust Wells Fargo or
mm,
Bank of America or Chase Bank?"
mm,
And they're like, "Yeah, of course I trust them." I said, "Well, did you know since 2000,
mm.
the majority of the big four banks have been fined like $200 billion?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you trust their records, right? So
Uh,
why are we not trusting the records from the crypto exchange?"
mm,
So there's like a perception
mm,
issue too. I think that kind of changes, I think, with prosecution for cases as well.
mm. Okay. So when you say 7 to 80%, 7 to 8% is the number of cases that have been solved,
Mm.
or the amount of money.
7 to 8% of our cases. So we took like,
Mm,
I want to say we took probably like 55 crypto cases so far that we were primary on. We took like 35
mm,
assisted cases. So that means 35 agencies came to us for assistance.
mm.
So we took about say like 80 or 90 cases. And out of that, 7 to 8% of that we recovered assets out of.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Okay.
and that's not
For
a full amount. So if you lost like, say like $20,000 and we recovered, five, that's still a recovery to us. It may not be a full amount of recovery.
Okay. Got it. Got it. And for fiat, it's basically arrest. So that's more
Hmm.
harder to trace. Uh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. And it's also, I mean, I'm assuming it also takes longer processes because you
Yeah.
then have to hand over to the prosecution, then they have to follow it, and then
Mhm.
eventually trial, and then finally arrest. Right. So that would be a full cycle.
Right. And
Mm,
cash is easier to hide too, right? So if I'm money laundering,
mm,
I withdraw the money gets wire transferred over to wherever it goes.
mm,
That guy can now go buy something with that money. And he
mm,
can say he bought a car for cash. How do I
mm,
prove that, right?
mm,
There's other ways to launder your cash that we may not recognize once that money's out of the system. So,
mm, mm. Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. I also noticed that I think you also have in your title, which is major crimes as a
mhm,
division, right? So
yeah.
I guess you also talked a little bit about the local PDs and the state police, right? So the
Mhm.
major crimes is focuses on a particular type of financial crime, or a all types of financial crime that goes to state police go to major crimes.
No, so
Mm, mm,
so our major crimes for our agency is kind of case dependent. So it's anything that our patrol level guys can handle. Typically, it's like uh, sex assaults that involve juveniles,
mm,
robberies, bank robberies,
mm,
arsons,
mm,
homicides, obviously, things like that. So high dollar financial crimes will come to us.
mm,
I
mm,
have kind of cut a niche out for
mm,
myself where I try and take all financial crime cases for the most part.
mm,
Just because, like I told you, not a lot of people are doing them.
mhm,
So I've tried to take that on
mm,
to
mm,
help as best I can because it's not getting enough attention.
mm,
But other agencies may actually have a financial crimes unit. Like I
mm,
know Hartford PD, the Hartford PD is a local city in Connecticut. They have their own financial crimes unit. I know a couple other agencies have one as well, but our agency doesn't have one.
Mm,
So, which is, I think, a mistake on our part, but that's why I try to take that on myself because it's such a needed space.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. And this is specifically to Connecticut. Not all
Yeah,
state department may or may not have it. Okay. Okay.
right.
Got it. Got it. Okay. The other side that I wanted to also spend some time on is I met a guy in one of the conferences in New York. His name is Harvey, and then he was talking about how he landed in Hawaii, and then
Mm,
when he landed, the hotel guys told him that you don't have a hotel anymore. And then he was
mm,
trying to find out why the hell it happened. And apparently somebody was scamming him and was calling all the bookings that he had already done to cancel those reservations. And then this particular hotel he had canceled. And then Harvey had landed with his wife and his two kids. And he was super pissed off, right?
I
The
bet.
moment he landed at like after so long hours of flight, and he was like preparing to rest in the hotel room, right? So then he got pissed off, and I also hear a lot of victims talking in those terms. By the way, that I'm pissed off.
Mm,
Somebody scammed my, I'm angry, right? Um, and most of the time they want to act, they want to do
mm,
something, right? Either they rant. Typically, when you don't like food in a restaurant, you do a Yelp rating or like Google rating
right.
and stuff, right? So most people want to act and do something with that, right?
Mm,
And so in Harvey's case, especially, he went on, started stalking the scammer. This guy was like flying all over the place with Harvey's money. And so he was tracking where that guy was going and calling each PD in that particular place and then telling them, hey, this guy is going to this particular this. And then he followed him up and eventually got him arrested, got
wow.
the scammer arrested, right? So I have a feeling that there is, from a victim standpoint, um, not all of them do it, but a lot of them would want to, not because
Mm,
they are angry, but because they are one, obviously they're angry, but
right.
second is also that they have to pay for what they're doing, right? How can a victim, for example, what's the best way once, let's say, they realize they're scammed? What's the best thing that they can do?
Man, I for us here, I usually tell them to reach out to AARP's Fraud Watch Network.
Hmm.
I think they have probably one of the better
Hmm.
abilities to kind of help victims work through being scammed or victimized by someone in the financial crime space. Um, I always tell them to report it to the FBI's IC3 because it's a good place for us to collect data
Hmm.
and kind of understand what types of scams are occurring and how much losses and where the scams are is regionalized or whatever. So those are like two of the bigger ones, and then I mean it really is. I know there's a bunch of other organizations that are out there. The Global Anti-Scam Alliance is one of them. GASA, that's been really good lately. Um, and there's a few. I believe SCAMS is the acronym for the other organization. It's that it involves more of the emotional side of things. So because I think you really need to look at it holistically now, right? Because these victims have been hit financially, emotionally, um, and they don't know what to do with it, right? Like you said, they're angry. But what do I do with that anger? I'm gonna call the police and report it. But how much are we really doing with that, right? We're trying to do our investigation, but we don't really relay to them all the steps that we're taking because it's such a long, lengthy process. So I feel like they're not getting a complete picture of what's happening for them, right?
Yeah.
There's no one-stop shop for all that stuff. And that's the challenge for us because we're so detached from that part of it. We, take their information, we go do our investigation. We forget that whole connection to the human part of it a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I think that's where these other companies like AARP that have the Fraud Watch Network or GASA or Scams can really help push that. And I know that's something, I don't know if you know Erin West with
Yep.
Operation Shamrock.
Mm-hmm.
She's trying to do something similar where she sees that these people are being victimized by pig butchering and like, how do you bridge that gap now? Because they're not only did they lose a lot of money, but they also are emotionally distraught. Some people are killing themselves over these situations because they're so in the hole. So there really needs to be more of a, especially technology wise, like a one-stop shop for these people to go to where they can report stuff, maybe get some victim services and potentially even track their case a little bit to see where, where they are. Like almost like if I go to a restaurant and you get text messages, oh, your food's almost ready to be delivered, kind of a thing. Like
mm,
you want
mm,
to know where your case is going. This guy's almost going to get arrested. You want to know that like that kind
mm,
of thing's happening.
mm,
But there's no real place for that right now.
mm. Okay. So basically, there is third-party organizations like Beef Shop. It's essentially NGOs, I would assume, right?
Hmm.
And things like what some of the team members are doing there is creating these alliances, right? Okay. Okay. But I still see you are talking about having a one-stop shop where somebody could go and probably report and then have a tracking of sort. But the
Yeah.
FBI IC3 is not something that is um it's basically a reporting mechanism, but you don't get updates on that, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, I don't know like the back how the FBI operates in the back end of that. I know that someone's monitoring it, obviously. I
Mm,
don't know if they're, spitting it out to specific agencies based on type of scam or location or dollar amounts.
mm,
But I
mm,
just know that we use it mostly as like a deconfliction method. So if I
mm,
do get a case, I'll check to see if there's
mm,
typologies that are
mm,
similar,
mm, mm.
or if I need to try and find like a proactive case that I know for my region, I can use that as a method to look for a case as well.
Okay. Okay. Understand. Understand. And finally, I do want to understand, what type of data do you use for your investigation? I'm assuming you are connected to the on-chain networks of, let's say, cryptos. But
Mm-hmm.
for fiat or other types of investigation, what type of data do you use?
Mostly open source when it comes to those kinds of cases, because we'll have to deal directly with the banks to get their data back.
Mm,
So whatever they give us on the back end, that if they're using your software for
mm,
some kind of identification purposes, we'll get
mm,
that data from them.
mm,
But there's nothing that we use as an agency for financial crime cases. Really, it more comes to the crypto side of the house because we need that technology to uh, trace the blockchain to make it more visually appealing, right?
mm,
And
mm,
to get that attribution on the back end to see if that wallet belongs to
mm,
Coinbase or whoever.
mm,
So for regular financial crime cases, we don't really, there's no real mechanism other than like, FinCEN, which
mm,
really I wouldn't even call it like a technology software, right? It's just another reporting mechanism that we have access to.
mm,
Um, so I know some people use like Maltego
mm,
or like I2 from IBM to
mm,
more, but it's more like
mm,
a way to build out cases. So if I
mm,
have a big network of scammers or criminals that are money laundering cases, you can use something like Maltego or I2 to kind of build that network out to get a visualization of it.
mm,
Um, but we
mm.
don't have any like tech that we're using for like financial crime cases.
Okay. Okay. Understand. And my final question, this is a question that I typically ask all my guests here is what is one thing that you are essentially like you feel that should have happened and it's like has not happened. And it's frustrating to you because you see that, no, this should be happening. Like, why is this not happening? Right. What's that thing?
Mm. That's a really good question, Robbie. Man, I think, I mean, because we're talking financial crimes and like tech and stuff like that. I don't understand why government agencies don't put more money into technology
Mm,
for their investigators.
mm,
I mean, I know why because of budgets and everything else, but there's not really a focus on it
mm,
as much, and I feel like it always puts us behind the curveball, right?
mm,
We're
mm,
talking about education here
mm,
and working these cases, but as technology improves on the bad guy side,
mm.
we need to improve also. And I
Exactly.
just
Mm,
feel like we're so delayed in that,
mm,
and it's hard for the why isn't it happening is isn't the boss level of each agency seeing that and
mm,
understanding that. So trying
mm,
to get that message out there that we need to invest in technology to avoid the AI scams that are going to be coming, right?
mm.
The voice AI that especially like,
Yeah.
know
Mm,
your customer information, you talk about stuff like that and people using voice technology to get you onto your accounts.
mm,
The voice AI is going to be taking over that. And I'm terrified of it because we're going to have bank fraud cases left and right. And
mm,
unless they
mm,
have some kind of other identification software in
mm,
place to take care
mm,
of that.
mm,
Um,
mm.
that's mine, I think.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. Awesome. That's really awesome to hear from you, Matthew. I mean, a lot of insights that, I mean, especially the crypto versus fiat one, that is something that I'm like, that's funny. Uh,
Good question,
and
actually.
Thank you so much, Matthew. It's so nice to see you, and would love to have you again. And
Appreciate it.
a different side of the coin itself for our audience to hear
It's
from.
been awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Have a nice day. Thank you.